Hello, and welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at a rendering technique. This is when we shade something to show a material texture. If you'd like to have a go at home, you're going to need a few things. The first thing you're going to need is a nice clean sheet of A4 paper, a pencil, and if you've got them, quite importantly, some colouring crayons. Let's get started. Okay, so we're going to do 3 different rendering techniques in today's demonstration. We're going to look at wood, plastic and metal. We're going to start off with our wooden texture. Now, I'm going to start with a yellow. And all I'm going to do with my crayon is I'm going to shade in all of this one side. Now I'm pressing on quite lightly, so it's not too dark. And you'll notice as well that when I am shading, I'm always shading in the same direction. I don't change the direction. Now I missed a few bits at the bottom, but I'll do the same thing again, just down here. And I'll shade everything in that one direction. If I don't, what will end up happening is, if I shade like this, and then I change my angle, and then I shade like this, and then I do this, and then I do that, it just looks messy. So keep everything when you're shading in the same direction. Okay, now I'm going to do this side here. Now, you can shade diagonally. It's a little bit more tricky though, because as you can see, I'm having to get longer and longer and longer and longer, and it's more and more difficult to do that. But I can keep shading in that direction and just keep going over my work. Now with the wooden texture, we're basically putting down the base layer, and this particular wood is like a nice light yellowy pine maybe, so we're going to put that yellow in there. Now I'm going to be quite careful when I'm shading the top, because I need this to be quite light. And I've tilted my crayon so that I'm shading on its side almost, and you can see I get a much different texture when I shade on its side. There we go, quite happy with that. Now I'm going to switch over to my orange crayon, and now I'm going to start putting in that wooden grain. Now I'm going to start on this first panel here like this, and maybe I'm going to create a lovely little knot where one of those tree branches has just appeared from, like that. And then with this I'm then going to flow my wooden texture around the outside, so it's going to start to follow around the outside like that. We get that like kind of curved shape. I'm going to do the other side, so we'll curve up this way this time, like that. Try to make sure that when you're drawing the wooden grain, you don't draw in straight lines. Nature doesn't work in straight lines. Now, quite importantly here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry this line on now, and that's going to go off the end of the box like that. Now I can loop that round and create a little knot out of that, and then maybe a part of this is going in that direction as well, and then maybe I'll bring something in over here like that. Now I've got the grain down, it's time to start shading, so I'm going to go for my brown now. Now I'm going to start shading in these edges slightly, and I'm pressing on quite lightly at this point. I'm not going to press on too hard, so I'm trying to blend these colours together. Like that. And all I'm doing is I'm just shading on one side of this grain to show that there's a little bit of pattern and some shadow to it. There we go, and I'm going to do that around all the little pieces of wood grain. Trying to be as careful as I can and remember to shade in that same direction. Like this. Now hopefully you guys are doing this at home and you'll be able to keep up with where I'm at, but if not, don't be afraid to pause the video, catch up, and then join me at the next tutorial. That's fine. But we are just shading in between this grain to start to build up those layers of texture. Now, I learnt this at art school, and it's a technique I use to check my drawing, and it's quite important because sometimes when we're drawing something and we're quite close to it, you sort of lose the quality. Now looking at that drawing there, I'm like, oh, that doesn't quite look right, it looks a little bit scruffy. But what's really important is if you hold the work out at arm's length, and I can visualize that for you by doing this. I can move this back like that, and then you can go, oh, okay, yeah, I can kind of see that wood texture coming along. I've got some blending to do. I can see I've got some blending to do there, but it's getting there. So we're going to carry on. And just remember, every now and again, just hold your work over arm's length. Check. We're busy here doing all the detail work, and sometimes you can get lost in the detail. Now, very important for those of you studying design and technology at GCSE level, you guys are going to need to be able to render your materials for your design ideas, so we're going to expect you to be able to apply this in your design work. Just lightly shade that away. Right, now then, we need to decide on a very quick point of reference for the lighting. And I tend to quite like to have a little L up here like that. You don't need to put the arrow on, but that's where the light's coming from. Which means that I need to cast a shadow over here, like that. Now I'll draw the shadow on in a moment, but just so I know that this piece here is going to be the darker piece. That way I can actually use my brown crayon now and shade over the whole thing nice and lightly. Just shade over. Don't forget to use the edge of that pencil crayon and shade it nice and light. Now if you wanted to at home, you could have a go at drawing something a bit more exotic than just a cube. You could have a go at doing a wooden toy or a pool toy or something like that, like a little train or something. This one's going to have a little bit of shadow on here, so I'm going to add a really light rendering of shadow here. Try and keep it consistent, try and keep it the same. We don't want to do a gradient here, we just want to add a little bit of shadow. And then if I think I've gone and added too much shadow now, I'm going to have to go back to my shadow layer and add a little bit more shadow now. That's fine though, that's okay. It's all going to add to this depth and this texture. Remember, hold it at arm's length. How's it looking now? We're nearly there, I think. I think what I might do is just try and blend some of this together with my crayon, my brown crayon. I'm just going to blend some of these bits together. Very, very lightly. I want these bits to sort of blend so that I can't really tell where they start and where they finish. That's the goal. So really, really lightly shading here with my crayon. Now, there's a nice little technique I'm going to show you here that you can use if you've got one but you don't have to do it, and it's not essential, but it's a nice technique if you've got the option to do so. If I take a rubber and I press ever so lightly, I'm just going to draw a line, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that line straight across here like that, but with my rubber. So one line, once only, just going to go straight across like that, but I'm going to do it with a ruler possibly, and just a straight line like that, just straight across the top, just a tiny little bit of highlight there, ever so slightly. And maybe if you've got a thinner rubber, you can go into these corners here, just into the corners, and just with your rubber just rub out these corners here. You end up with this beautiful little highlight. Let's add a little bit over here like that. There we go. Fantastic. And there's our wooden texture. And now if we pull it back over here, wow, look at that. Yeah, okay. That's what I'm talking about. Now, let's see if we can add a little bit of shadow to this. Now, the shadow predominantly is going to come from this area here, but we're going to get a little bit of shadow here in this angle. Now, this is quite hard to try and do here, so we're going to add a little bit of shadow here. So, really lightly with my pencil crayon, I've added a bit of a line there, so I know where I'm going to shade from. I'm going to turn the page round so I can shade it better with a better angle. And again, I'm using the edge of my brush. In fact, you know what? For you guys at home, I'm going to keep that guideline on there, but I wouldn't put the guides on there. I would just work with the crayon and just gradually shade out this shadow like that, and get a little bit lighter as well. Start off quite dark nearest the object, and then get a little bit lighter, and then I'm going to sneak in here, and I'm going to add that shadow in here as well, and that's just going to come around this side like that. There we go. Beautiful. Get that shadow in, that shading. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's our shadow. Let's bring this out a little bit more, actually. Like that. There we go. I'm going to go in and add a bit more depth to it. A little bit darker. Sometimes you just want to go back in and work a little bit more on your work, and that's okay. And if you make a little mistake, don't worry, you can use that rubber just to... I'd use a ruler here. I'd have a ruler there, and I would just define that line with my ruler. And I'd get rid of this bit, I don't want that bit, I want my shadow there. Like that. And then it's a little dark there, so I'm going to just bleed it out, gradient here. Bleed that work out, just have it getting lighter and lighter on its way out. That shadow is there like that. Fantastic. There's our wooden texture. Okay, let's move on to that next one. So, here's our plastic texture, and I'm going to go for a nice shiny red texture here. I think that's going to be quite a good colour to go for. And with this one, it's quite nice, quite easy, this one. We're going to start on this top layer here, and with a plastic, we have that bounce light, or the shine that we get, the highlight on a reflective material like plastic. So we're going to add in a few diagonal lines like this. And they're going to come across like that. Now, we're going to start in this corner, this edge, and I'm going to shade out, and I'm going to use a gradient. Now, a gradient is when we shade from dark and we gradually, we gradate to get lighter and lighter and lighter. Now that takes a bit of practice, which is a fantastic opportunity here to practice that. And we're going to leave this one here just white. We'll just leave that because that's going to be our highlight. And then here we'll add a little bit of shade like this, using the edge of that crayon again. And I might go dark here and just grade that out a little bit like that. So I end up with all these highlights everywhere. And maybe a little bit in this corner, like that. There we go. Great stuff. Okay. So I don't like these harsh lines actually. Let's try and gradate those back again. There we go. Lovely. We've got a few highlights there now, haven't we? Now, with this one, we can bring this down. So where it connects here, like I'm following this line here, and this line, and this line. We're moving parallel with that object. So I'm just going to, in fact, I'm going to try and do this without stopping. So let's bring the shadow in there. Let's get that shadow down here like this. Lovely. Now I've changed direction with my rendering there, but remember when I was shading, if I shade in that direction and then I change to this direction, I'm still shading in the same directions. I'm not doing this. It's either this and then I can do that, and that's something called cross-hatching, which you may have learnt from your art lessons. And it's a nice way of blocking in a colour and shading a colour and not missing any edges. So again, using the edge of my pencil crayon, I'm going to shade in all down this edge like that. I'm going to do this a little bit darker on the edge there, on those corners. And I might want to just add a little bit of a gradient here and a little bit of a gradient there, just so that they're not those harsh lines. And then here we'll have a little bit of dark there, and then do you know what, I'm just going to do a gradient all the way down here like this, and then this might go down here a little bit like that. I'm going to get the highlight there, aren't I? So I don't need to worry too much about this bit, because again, that's going to be in the shadow, isn't it? It's going to be in the shade, so I'll have this like that, all one colour. There we go, beautiful. Alright, okay. Same technique again. We're going to add in that shadow. So we're going to go like that. And I'm going to block it in with the edge of that pencil crayon, remember. Use the edge of that crayon. And just render that shadow in there like that. Fantastic. Now I don't know why I've done it in red particularly. I don't think it... Well, actually, it might have some what's called refraction, where on the table surface, because it's reflecting that light, it's actually going to shine back in the same colour. So we're not wrong to shade or to shade this shadow area in red, because you're going to get something called refracted light anyway. So that needs to just get blended a little bit more, because you're not going to get too much highlight there. You're going to get most of the highlight come from the top. Like that. And this, again, we can add this into a bit of a darker texture now, because we're in shadow, aren't we? We're in shadow, so this is going to be quite dark. Like that. And remember just to go back and have a little look. Yep, quite happy with that. Beautiful. There we go. I bet your plastic textures are looking just as good as mine. Okay, shall we have a go at that metal texture? This one's quite tricky. So, for this, I would just advise using your normal HB pencil. It's similar to the plastic texture in the sense that we need to add a highlight. Now, the highlight I'm going to go for here, I'm going to do like a V almost. I'm going to go down to the corner like that, and then I'm going to come up like this. And then all this is going to be the highlighted part, and the rest is going to be in shadow. And I'm going to put another V down here like this. So I'm just drawing these angles in, and this bit's going to be shaded in, quite dark. I'm just doing that with my pencil crayon. Now, I'll shade in over the top of everything now, like that. And I'll come down here and shade this bit. Like that. And then in here, I'm going to go really dark dark on this edge, really dark. So I'm pushing on pretty much as hard as I can at this part, and I'm going to gradually get lighter and lighter and lighter. There we go. Gradually getting lighter and lighter like that. Fantastic. Okay, so let's go in here. Do the same thing on there, using the edge of the brush, the pencil. So instead of using the nib, I'm going to tilt the pencil, so I'm using the edge. That's going to get me that nice shadow, that shading I'm looking for, and I'm going to go over the top like this and shade this bit in, and just shade this bit in over here at the top as well. And I might just go a little bit darker in this bit, because it kind of follows on, doesn't it, from that part there. So let's bring that out like that. Lovely. Okay, blend that a little bit. Tiny bit of blending here, because I don't want any harsh lines here particularly. I want it all to blend in quite nice together. Now, it's at this stage we could use that rubber again, and we can come in and we can just add in a few highlights. So I can just shade in a couple of highlights here like this, and I'm using the edge of the rubber to do that. And I'm going to come in and cut across this line again like I did before. I'll just tilt that round. So just with the edge of my rubber, I'm just picking up some highlights like that, just rubbing out that bit of pencil line like that. I might even add a little bit down here at the bottom. And don't be afraid to keep working back into it. If you're not quite happy with it, don't be afraid to go at it again. And you might think, oh, actually, I've not shaded that very well, and I want to change something here. Maybe I'll add a little bit of shadow down at the bottom there even, maybe. Now, looking at this shadowed part here isn't quite as dark as I need it to be, so I'm going to push on a bit harder. For me, I need to change my colour, so I need to go a little bit darker. And remember that I'm in a bit of shadow here, a bit of shade. So let's just darken this off a little bit like that. There we go. Does that look a bit better? Yeah, we've got a bit more depth now coming. Pushing on a little bit harder with these gradients, working back into my textures. And again, I can use that rubber and just lighten up ever so slightly little parts that I want to have brightened up like that. And shadow again over here. And then shading in that one direction like this. And then gradually gradiating that, using that gradient to shade out. There we go, like that. So, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. There are 3 rendered textures. I'll just drop on here what we need for each one. So we need a HB pencil for the metal. For the plastic, we just need any colour. So I've gone for a red, but any colour, and you can get your textures done there for that one. For the wood texture, that's going to take a few more different colours. So we're going to need a yellow, we needed an orange, and we needed a brown as well, didn't we? And for highlights, you might want to use a rubber. So there you go, ladies and gents. There are rendering techniques. I hope you've had fun designing your own rendering textures. Until next time, stay safe. and I'm looking very much forward to seeing some of your textures that you do at home. Bye now.